So yeah, this is for Brian, but for everybody, because Brian has requested that I talk about psychophobia. It's a really interesting phenomenon. It was a term coined by R.D. Laing, I had the privilege of studying many decades ago, and he was the guy that gave me the template for understanding the human condition. And if you don't know R.D. Laing, I really recommend you research a little bit, because he was the father of modern psychotherapy and an indescribable genius. Anyway, so psychophobia, he coined this term to mean that we're afraid, we have a phobia about our own mind. And he said it's a condition, a symptom of the modern world, whereby what you're getting is a society of extremely well-educated imbeciles. That was his view on it. And the meaning that we are conditioned, or increasingly conditioned it would seem, to be afraid of looking into our own mental processes. And therefore there's a propensity, which is encouraged by the medical and pharmaceutical combination industry, to mask any existential unrest with antidepressants, antipsychotics and what have you. Which has got its place. It's an expedient. It keeps the world from being too noisy, I suppose, but long term it's not going to be a solution. It's just a mitigation in the short term. Now, why are we afraid of our own minds? Well, firstly, we have a misconception about what the mind is. We think of the mind as a place. We think of the mind as a thing, an entity, whereas in fact, mind is not a noun at all, it's a verb. And I don't mean just in mind the gap, I mean mind is a process. It's just a hugely complex series of mental processes going on. And I would posit that the reason we're afraid to look at the mind is because we don't know where to sit within it. And the Taoist approach is interesting, because what it suggests is that you shift where you're observing yourself and observing your reaction to the world around you and observing your impression of the world around you. You shift that to the back brain. We're used to having it in the forebrain, because the forebrain is also the locus of the internal narrative, the stories that we're telling ourselves, by which we describe existence as best we can to make some sense of it, and through that evaluate, or try and evaluate, our position in the game from moment to moment, because that's going on in there as well. When you're observing the world from the forebrain, you're observing it through the filters of the story that you're telling yourself. So you're not really getting a clear impression of what's occurring. You're getting a really distorted one, which may or may not coincide with what's going on, but most times it's not. You then develop fears of sadness or grief or anger or maybe joy about the stories that you're telling yourself, which you assume are your genuine feelings, but they're not. They're feelings that you're actually being produced because of a story that you're telling yourself. None of this is actually real. So what the Taoists say is that you'll never resolve all of that, because it's the nature of the mind in the forebrain to be like that. It's intrinsic to the human condition anyway. What they suggest you do is you draw the mind, as I said, to the back of the brain, and from there you learn to observe the mental processes occurring and the feelings that arise as they do. Now, I would be able to talk about psychophobia for hours and hours, and it's obviously not going to do that right now. So I'm going to leave it here on the basis that I'll come back and talk about it more by request. Just talking about fear in general, because a phobia is a fear, an irrational, unreasonable fear. Anxiety, which is endemic in our society today, which is also a manufactured fear, arises because we don't acknowledge and acquiesce to the fact that we are afraid in the first place. Being an animal on the planet, you have to be afraid. It's impossible not to be afraid. Being afraid is part of what keeps you alive. And being able to breathe and go, yeah, I have fear, it's fine. I have fear, I'm breathing, I have fear, I'm breathing. The fear passes in moments. By not acknowledging the fear, because we're taught, you mustn't show fear, don't be afraid. So we train ourselves to not be afraid. In other words, we mask the fear. So when the natural uprising of fear occurs in the belly just because you're an animal on a planet. Instead of going, yeah, man, fear, I'm alive, this is great, I love it, I'm breathing, I feel the fear, and the fear passes, we go, oh, I've got to get rid of this fear, I don't know what to do there. What am I afraid of anyway? I mean, what is it that I'm afraid of? And without realizing it, within moments, not even moments, nano moments, you found a reason for being afraid. I'm going to get ill, I'm going to be broke, I'm going to fail, I'm going to be a loser, people are going to hate me, they're not going to like me, whatever it is. You'll create a reason, but you do it so cleverly that you really believe it is the reason for being afraid. It's not. There are only a few reasons for being genuinely afraid. One is very loud noise, another one is falling off a height, another one is a wild animal coming at you. For example, these other fears are just manufactured nonsense, but we are held in thrall to them. And that is the root of all this phobic kind of activity in the mind. So this is what my suggestion is. For the next day, just be aware of what's going on in your belly. And every time you feel the fear, rather than compulsively trying to mask it, change it, distract yourself from it, phone somebody, buy something, do whatever, when you feel the fear, go, I feel fear. It's fine. It's okay to feel afraid. I'm breathing with the fear. Could I let go of wanting to change it? Yes, I could let go of wanting to change it. Would I let go of wanting? Yes, I would let go of wanting to change this. In that process, there is no more fear. You're alive again. You feel the excitement of being here, and you're reset. So that's my little tip for the day in dealing with fear. Big subject, short little expose of my approach, but may it serve you well, and thank you.